Welcome, everybody. So great to see so many people popping into the Zoom room. Just put our notes here. And if you're just joining us, if you want to add your name to the participant list, that would be awesome. We would love to get to know you. And I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. So I am Erin Robinson. I'm part of the Openscapes team, and we're super excited for this ESIP session. I'm joined by Julie Lowndes and an exciting speaker panel that we'll introduce shortly. Just a reminder that we're recording and that we also abide by ESIP's community participation guidelines. So I am in our notes on the top of page 3. And I really wanted to set the stage for this session by just referencing back to the solutions to large-scale environmental and societal challenges require radical collaboration, which sometimes we talk about as open science, but science has been really limited by this hero model, and it's been competitive and siloed. But that's not how things work at ESIP, and it's not how we have worked in Openscapes. And so really we're here to talk about changing the story as we consider this transition to open science, and we consider it a journey like this landscape picture, not a destination. So it's a process of continuing to change and refine your practice over time with more of a growth mindset than getting someplace. And so we scroll to the top of page 4. We do this at Openscapes by helping teams navigate the landscape safely. And sometimes people feel like these sad, lonely animals in the bottom left. And this is a feeling that I personally have had at different times in the way that I work with data, with earth science data, and trying to figure things out. I feel like it's kind of a cyclical process of like that piece of things coming up again and again. So Openscapes welcomes people. So often Julie and I think of ourselves as the fox and the hedgehog that are right in the lower right, welcoming research teams to the community, but we also are growing the mentor community. So today you're going to hear from a lot of people who are actually like these little animals who have the hats on other places in the landscape, who are doing all sorts of things to help each other and help research teams refine their process. So we engage the bright spots, we empower a learning culture, and I'm really sorry that we've got my dog doing her thing. And then we amplify open leaders. And so really this session today is about amplifying the leaders. There are so many stories of people that are doing great work, and we're excited to share just a few of them here. And then before I hand it off to Steph Butland, I just want to say that, movement building doesn't happen overnight. And we had a session last year, this time at ESIP, and we have this session today, I think shows some amount of progress that we've made and all together, working together around radical collaboration. And so I'd encourage you to take ideas and things that you learn here today and carry them forward with you. And let's just keep changing the way that we do science. So with that, I'll hand it off to Steph.
Thanks, Erin. I'm going to tell you about our plan for today, and I'll do this by sharing our purpose, our planned outcomes, and the process through which we're going to accomplish those things. So as Erin mentioned, this is building on our session from the ESIP Winter 2022 meeting. We want to hear from and boost a diverse set of leaders from across the US government and academia to highlight open science in daily work, including peer teaching, mentoring, and learning with Openscapes. We want to create more channels for inter and cross-agency learning and to share open science stories across agencies. We'll be able to take away short stories that we can all share with our communities that'll help us identify common needs, and we'll be publishing a summary blog post on the Openscapes site. Today's speakers will be sharing stories, examples, and concrete tips for supporting each other and colleagues with collaborative, inclusive, open science approaches with the aim of strengthening channels for inter and cross-agency learning in this year of open science in 2023. Speakers will be presenting in fishbowl style, with each group having 8 minutes. There will be a pause for them to have a quick follow-up with each other. And at the end, this will be followed by a 30-minute discussion that is open to everyone. We'll be monitoring the chat throughout, as well as this Google Doc. And so we encourage you to contribute by taking notes to capture all of this shared wisdom and add your own questions. Over to you, Julie.
Great. Thanks so much, Stephanie and Erin. It is now my pleasure to introduce our speakers who are speaking today about their work around movement building and the stories that they'll be sharing. So we'll kick it off with Ileana Fenwick from the University of North Carolina. She is a third-year marine fisheries PhD student there, and she's part of the Openscapes core team. Today, she's launching the Pathways to Open Science program, which is so exciting, and we can't wait to hear more about it. This is a program to welcome more Black marine scientists to open science and build skills in community. So Ileana will be talking about movement building through this first welcome to open data science. Next, we'll hear from Adian Rios and Josh London. They will be sharing about movement building inside government organizations. Adian Rios is a research ecologist at NOAA Fisheries in the Caribbean Fisheries branch of the Sustainable Fisheries Division at the Southeast Fisheries Science Center. And Adi participated in Openscapes in fall 2021, and then has been a mentor throughout 2022 and co-led 5 cohorts last year within NOAA Fisheries. Josh London is a wildlife biologist at NOAA Fisheries. He's in the Marine Mammal Lab at the Alaska Fisheries Science Center. And Josh's research focuses on ecology and conservation of Arctic seals. Josh is a longtime open source developer and open science champion. I think we first met at our StudioConf in 2017, and we're already thinking about how to bring this more to NOAA Fisheries. Josh has been a mentor with Openscapes. He's co-led the winter and these 4 cohorts last fall with NOAA Fisheries. Next, we'll hear from Corey Clatterbuck, who will be talking about movement building by forking Openscapes internally. Corey is an environmental scientist at the California Water Board, which is one of the many state agencies within the California EPA. She works at the Office of Information Management and Analysis and in the Surface Water Ambient Monitoring Program. And so with Corey, she has supported Openscapes trainings throughout 2021 and then has forked this whole program internally with her colleagues, co-led with her colleague Anna Holder last year. And then we'll hear about movement building through contributing back to open science. And this we'll hear from Luis Lopez and Cassie Nichols. Luis Lopez is a research software engineer at the National Snow and Ice Data Center, NSIDC, in Boulder, Colorado. He has helped develop tools and services to facilitate data access and discoverability across different NASA Earth missions. And he's been part of the first cohort of NASA Openscapes mentors and has been the lead developer of the Earth Access Python library and the Corn Jupyter Hub environment. And Cassie Nichols is an applied science systems engineer working for NASA's PODAC, the Physical Oceanography DAC. She became a NASA Openscapes mentor last year and is consistently looking for better ways to make the complicated simple for data end users and researchers through mechanisms like data tutorials, workflow diagrams, and cheat sheets. So we are so thrilled with this amazing lineup of speakers. I will stop sharing my screen and welcome you, Ileana, to present next.
Excellent.
So much.
I'll need permission from the host to share my screen.
Yes, I will make sure you have it. There you go, Ileana.
Thank you. Okay, great. And confirmation that my screen is being seen. Awesome. Excellent. Well, hi, everyone. I am so excited to share with you some of the insights that we've learned while planning the Pathways to Open Science series. The Pathways program is a remote event series for Black marine and environmental researchers to build community around data-intensive science. And I want to highlight our 2 collaborators on this project, the first being Black Women in Ecology, Evolution, and Marine Science, BLEAMS, and the other being Black and Marine Science, BIMS, in collaboration with us at Openscapes. So I'm here talking about open science today because it radically changed the way that I do my work. So a definition to share is that open science is the tools and the practices that are enabling a more reproducible, transparent, and inclusive future for data-intensive science. But to really tell you about what open science is and what it means to me, I'd like to tell a little bit of a story. Let's begin with taking a look at this illustration from Allison Horst that we got another look at earlier as well. This is the landscape of data scientists and open scientists. When I graduated from Hampton University for undergrad, I joined a quantitative fisheries lab to conduct my PhD. And as optimistic as I was, in reality, when I began grad school, this was me. I was working with huge, robust data sets of decades worth of fisheries data. Dealing with COVID especially, I didn't know how to process it all, and I really began to feel as though I lost my spark. I came in so excited, but I was so rocked by the isolation and the frustration I was feeling, attempting to use data science in my work. But in 2021, I participated in the Openscapes Champions Program, an open science mentorship program for researchers. And it was then I felt as though open science really saved me. I found community in a space where we're all working to lower the barriers to access for data science engagement. I learned new tools like GitHub that radically improved the efficiency and reproducibility of my work. And finally, I found my spark again. I loved what open science did for me, and I wanted to do it for others too. So when I finished the Champions program, I wanted to see how our questions about supporting historically excluded scientists like myself could turn into something more. And these questions were the very beginning of the collaboration that you all are seeing here today. And so I went from an outsider believing data science was just a tool that I could use and being really frustrated and thinking that I couldn't, to now participating in the open data science community and working to make it better at that. And that led us to the Pathways to Open Science program. This 6-part event series for Black researchers begins tonight. And so I'm thrilled to share with you all some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. One of the first challenges I had to learn was challenging my views on how to engage. I learned very quickly that exposure is not enough. When I joined the Openscapes team, I was so thrilled. I wanted to forward every event to every person in my network. And I felt as though really naively at the time that my excitement would overpower the overwhelm that people feel seeing an event about something they'd never heard of before. I really believed at the time that my excitement about open science would cut through all of that and people would hop on the bandwagon with me. I believed exposure was one of the main culprits in the lack of diversity and inclusion I was seeing in the open science space. But in reality, and what I've learned and we worked really hard to address in our Pathways to Open Science programming is that in a majority of cases, it isn't exposure. It's much deeper than that. We have to lead with intention, with a listening ear, and with a degree of flexibility and open-mindedness that I didn't expect initially. And we have to think really critically about why people don't participate in opportunities like this one and build pathways to get there. So when it came to organizing this event series, I sat with myself and said, this is an incredible opportunity. Why would I not sign up for this? I'm my target audience. I get tons of emails every day of cool opportunities to sign up for. What's the difference between the ones I click on and attend and those that I forgo? Why would I not participate? So I found the cracks. Where are we losing people and where can we reel them back in during this event? And so what I'll mention today is not an exhaustive list by any means, but these are real issues that we addressed intentionally in our grant writing and program development that have increased our success rate. So the first crack that I want to talk about is I don't know what open science is. Students may see the title of the event series and tell themselves, I don't know what this is. I don't know why it's for me. I'm just going to skip over this one. This isn't the opportunity for me. But the way that we've addressed this crack is that students will see the very first event in the series is what is open science anyway, and what can it mean for you? So it's clear that you don't have to know to show up, and that this is a safe space to learn and to explore what it can mean for them. The second crack is this is just another opportunity in my inbox. I get plenty of emails a day. What makes this opportunity any different? Many people, students especially, can relate to having an advisor, a professor, a supervisor send you plenty of emails on any given day. So we wanted to take it a step further to enhance our recruitment for the event series. This led to the development of one of my favorite parts of this project, our faculty award. We wrote into our funding an honorarium for HBCU faculty who agreed to these two simple tasks, HBCU being historically Black colleges and universities. The first task was to meet with me for 1 hour. And we talked all about students' data science needs, what their curriculum already included, and how our event series and resources could benefit their students. It's been an absolutely invaluable experience to hear about how we can meet students where they are and improve the outcomes of programming like this. The second ask was for professors to take 5 minutes of class time in their courses this semester to share the Pathways opportunity with their students and encourage participation. We asked the faculty, per their own discretion, decide how to use the Pathways program to supplement their courses. We have faculty offering it as extra credit as a professional development opportunity. We have others making it an assignment to attend. And we're demonstrating to students that this is a worthwhile investment of their time. So we went from being just another program announcement in people's inboxes to seeing students get really excited about an external opportunity to supplement their coursework. And so I'm really excited to say that tonight, starting the Pathways program, we have 7 HBCUs that we've partnered with through our faculty award. More often than not, HBCU faculty go above and beyond for their students, plugging them into roles, into opportunities, often on their own dime, on their own time, outside of the requirements of their role. This was our opportunity to compensate them for their time, contributing to our program development and community building efforts. This last crack is unfortunately a pretty common one. I won't see anyone who looks like me if I attend this program. Data suggest that less than 3% of data scientists are women of color. So I'm no stranger to walking into rooms and being one of the only ones there, if any more than myself. But representation and inclusion are an imperative piece to community. And unfortunately, it's not something that I feel in every space that I walk into. But this event series is for Black marine and environmental scientists by Black marine and environmental scientists to cultivate a unique community of support and collaboration. It is the result of incredible efforts from the Openscapes organization to center our voices and our leadership in this initiative. This event is a collaboration between Black and marine science, Black women in ecology, evolution, and marine science, and us here at Openscapes. And it's led by Black women and HBCU graduates. This is some of the members of our planning team, and our graphics even feature Black characters designed by an HBCU grad herself. And so with the invaluable support of the core team members at Openscapes, we're looking at an incredibly successful series. We have over 100 registrations for tonight's very first session. And all of this is to say, the future of open science is bright. This very first Pathways to Open Science program is just the start of the work we'll do to build more equitable open science programming. And I hope that this brief presentation encourages all of us to challenge our community building assumptions and intentionally address the cracks in our program for a brighter future for open science. Thank you. And I will go ahead and stop sharing.
Amazing job, Ileana. There's claps throughout and people so excited and happy about your work. Amazing. Is there any questions or follow-up from any of the other speakers before we move to the next?
Hey, Julie, I'll just, I was just going to chime in really quick and say, I think, I mean, it's an honor to like be on a panel with Ileana. I think what she's doing is amazing, but I think it's also pretty exciting to think about the years down the road, all of the researchers that will be working with many of us or many of our colleagues. I think that's what's really exciting, is to think where we'll be 5-10 years from now and think of all the ripple out effects of work like this. So just still always amazed every time Ileana presents what she's doing.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. I'm so excited for what's to come.
I'll amplify the feeling in 2021 that this was my experience in Openscapes was an anti-burnout. You know, I was feeling burnt out, but this gave energy. And so I love the graphic, like you mentioned, and how important it was at that time to just give us energy to be the kind of voices that tell people about Openscapes. And so 2021 was a tough time, but it was an exciting time to join this community.
Absolutely. I definitely agree.
Eli, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, it's been so fantastic watching your progression, Ileana, because I remember when you first came in talking, you know, and you just talked about, you know, how you're so excited. And I remembered like hearing that in your voice. And so my question is like it was really interesting in this talk kind of to see your progression in your thinking about this. And you know, understanding, hey, why don't people just get as excited as I am and just jump in? And I'm interested in the aspect of your connection with these historically Black colleges, and how did you make those connections? So was that just showing your enthusiasm, people contacted you, or did you just like start cold calling or cold emailing?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I am a graduate of Hampton University, which is a historically Black college university in Virginia, on the coast of Virginia. And there's actually a photo back there. My father is also a grad of Hampton University as well. My sister is actually finishing up this year. So I'm very passionate about HBCUs and providing resources to them and their students to continue to do excellent work and bring that to the workforce. One of the benefits of a lot of the experiences that I had during my undergraduate tenure was I did a lot of programming that was tailored to diverse students. And so I've connected with HBCU students across the country. I've worked with HBCU faculty just throughout the course of my research or wanting to build inclusive programming, collaborating with other institutions when I was an undergraduate student. And so those connections are what I've been leveraging and connecting with other faculty. I'll ask a faculty member, you know, who else should I recommend to do this? And when I reached out to some faculty members that I already knew at some of these institutions, they said, hey, I don't have the capacity for this, but let me connect you to another professor in my department who might. And I reached out to my friends who I knew graduated from other HBCUs. And I said, hey, what professors do y'all want me to reach out to and to extend this offer to? And it just turned into like this network building kind of momentum that we've been using to really bring a lot of students to the Pathways programming. So it's been really exciting. And I think that we now have this really powerful network of educators and of people who have worked and really have this mission to support historically excluded students that we can loop into this kind of broader mission in bringing open science to everybody. So it's been really fun. And I found so much success in talking to faculty members about open science and wanting to bring it to their students. So even that alone has provided a lot of momentum for continuing to build those connections. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ileana. And yeah, I know there'll be many more questions about all the details and work that you're putting into this movement building and engagement. Thank you so much. Well, let's move to our next speaker, and then we'll be able to return and have a fuller discussion with everybody afterward. So we'll talk to the NOAA Fisheries group next, Adian Rios and Josh London.
I realized that Adi and I didn't flip a coin to see who was going to go first, but I think since some of my points are here in the beginning of the notes, I'll start. So thanks again to Julie for inviting us and being able to participate today. We're going to talk some about just our experience as mentors, growing kind of the Openscapes movement within NOAA Fisheries. So NOAA Fisheries, also known as the National Marine Fisheries Service. We're a line office within NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. We have science centers and regional offices throughout the country, including Hawaii and Alaska. So a lot of the work we do is really distributed across the country and is really prone to silos. So we all kind of do our own thing in our own region, and there's not a lot of mechanisms for close collaboration and sharing of information, especially when it comes to science and learning new things. So it really is a great opportunity for us to build those connections and to find common areas of inspiration and new areas of tools and ways of working. And as Julie mentioned in the beginning, we've done several cohorts at this point for Openscapes, and I feel like as a mentor throughout that process, I'm starting to see some really key things that stand out as I talk to people and as I see people move through the curriculum. And the first thing that's been really important, especially as we've kind of gone through and come out of the COVID pandemic and some of the isolation that we've all experienced, and that really took a hit on morale. And I think one thing that's been really inspiring is to see that for many of us, especially in like the science agencies, learning new skills is really something that builds morale. It gives people an opportunity to kind of change workflows, to learn new skills and to improve the culture and take ownership of that. And it goes hand in hand with morale. If people feel like they're making a difference, if people feel like they're advancing science, then that contributes to their morale, as opposed to kind of feeling stagnant, as if we're just kind of doing things the way we've always done things over and over again. And Openscapes really kind of encourages that. And we're starting to see some of those aspects trickle out beyond just the Openscapes curriculum. The other thing is something I think it's really important for us as mentors to keep in mind, and that is that all of these new tools that we learn about, R, Python, Quarto, GitHub, they're really exciting, and they're the shiny new objects, and they can be really distracting, and everyone can jump in and focus on that. But the real meaningful change comes from the small cultural shifts. It's not that everyone now, knows how to use GitHub, or everyone is using Quarto for their documents. It's that, we're having collaborative meeting notes. It's that we have better documentation of our processes. It's that there's more inclusive communication. We're better at project management. That's really where we start to see some of the fundamental changes and how we get things done. And getting a calendar invite and seeing that somebody has already set up meeting notes and has already propagated an agenda, participating in a meeting and seeing that multiple people are taking notes at the same time. Those are the kind of things that I feel have the most meaningful shift, because it doesn't involve everyone learning shiny tools or anything. It's just kind of advancing the culture forward slowly. And then lastly, the point that I think I found really challenging as a mentor is some of it comes back to that hero mentality that was mentioned earlier, but just this bigger sense that co-working and team collaboration is not something that we've all really learned from the beginning. If you go back to many of us when we were in grad school, whether a master's or a PhD, you were part of a lab and you had a community, but ultimately it was your dissertation and you were supposed to do everything. It was your analysis. You're supposed to learn everything on your own. And it really instilled in us this idea that anything meaningful that we do in science is supposed to be done by us as individuals. And so there's a lot of relearning that has to happen. And how do we work together? How do we collaborate? How do we be a bit more vulnerable and recognize that it's okay to share things when they're really messy? It's okay to share imperfect, quote unquote, ugly code. It's okay to ask for help early. That kind of stuff is a real challenge to kind of flip our brains and our culture and our ideas of how we work together. And as a mentor, I'm still struggling to learn how to do that. It's one thing just to tell people and over again that it's okay to share their code early on. It's okay to like have co-working sessions and stuff, but I still haven't learned how for people to flip that switch. And I think that's a real challenge for us. And the other thing too is just lastly, in government, like there's always going to be non-Openscapes things that we have to do. We're still going to send things around in Word documents and PDFs, and we're still going to do things in a very, non-open way. There's too much inertia in government to change it all at once. But I think it's about finding the right moments in the right places where we can kind of move things forward and slowly build out. So those are my thoughts, but now I want to turn it over to Adi because she has her own experiences that are just as valuable.
Thanks, Josh. I agree with everything you said. And I want to bring attention to my experience a little bit with the not sayings, but like the behaviors modeled by Openscapes that really hooked me, and that I try to model now when I'm trying to engage with others. After my first cohort, which was a NOAA fisheries across our different science centers, I was hooked. I was so excited. I came back with so much energy to my colleagues and wanted everyone to try it. And it's what really struck me was what we termed earlier radical collaboration, and that what we hear about, like, when everyone is a connector and knows a little bit more about each other, that becomes a superpower. But there are other things that I needed to see in order to be like, yes, like this is a great community. And part of that was also people talking about things that they didn't know how to do yet. But then, or on GitHub, you're seeing a project and people are sharing things they haven't figured out yet. And they're okay with telling you in their issues that they haven't figured out yet. That's revolutionary to me, because I would have never wanted people to see what I was working on until it was done. But it's okay to do that. And other people might have solutions that can help me. And so GitHub is truly growing across NOAA Fisheries and at our Science Center. And that is so exciting to really be able to contribute to each other's work in a much more efficient way. Again, with like getting to know each other and getting to know your community, breaking down those silos. I also like expressing that it's okay to reshare and repost things. Like if you found a really cool keyboard shortcut that you thought was exciting, go ahead and share it. If somebody already knows it, they'll be really excited about it again. And I feel like there's this fear. You don't want to bother people. You don't want to, like, they might already know it and you might not. But if it's something that you didn't know, there's a big chance that someone else in that community that you're sharing it with didn't know it either. And it could make their day a little better and make their work a little more efficient. So that's some of the comments that I have about, taking this experience as a mentor and really trying to model what really engaged me into feeling like I can change the way I work and make it a kinder, funner way for me to work, because working alone was not as much fun for me. And I really, really like that we've been able to transfer from being the person at my science center who does Openscapes to one of the people who are doing Openscapes, and it continues to grow.
Adiane, can I ask you to share a little bit about the Surfside sessions as well, just to talk about how you've helped bring colleagues together during the pandemic and beyond?
So when we did the Openscapes pathway, we gave our team names and we did seaside chats. But I had a little fun with it, and I suggested that ours should be called surf sessions, where instead of surfing waves, we surf workflows. And it's a little bit different to what most seaside chats, other seaside chats that I've been to, because it's really more of a show up, show and tell, have some troubleshooting, let's share it. We haven't used breakout groups as much, but what's exciting is that we've had turnout from people who participated in Openscapes, as well as our colleagues who have not. And so there were people who participated in the second cohort who were like, oh, it's like a refresher because I already learned so much in the surf session. And again, like this is something I learned in Openscapes. So like when you give a meeting a name like that and a purpose, and it's on the calendar monthly, it becomes different. It gets like, it's yours, and it's part of the meeting itself builds your community, and people show up. And sometimes I go to these just for the energy that I get out of them, not even for the information, but for the community that I'm excited to see.
Awesome. Any other follow-ups from other speakers or questions? Okay, well, there's a lot of notes in the doc, and we'll have more questions for you after after in the final discussion. Thank you so much, Josh and Ayan. So we are on page 8 of the notes doc if you're following along, and we will hand it over to Corey Clatterbuck.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Steph, if you can enable screen sharing real quick, I do have some slides to share.
1 minute, Corey.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Megan.
No, no problem. I'm sorry that I didn't. Okay.
Oh, fabulous. All right. Can everyone see slides? Wonderful. Well, I do want to thank Julie and Aaron for inviting me to this panel. It's so exciting to talk about the work that my colleague Anna Holder and I have been doing over the last year to fork Openscapes internally. And last year, Anna was here to give a talk about our experience mentoring with Julie and Aaron and Openscapes and how we plan to build on this experience. And the good news is we've done it now. And so I'll talk about how forking Openscapes for water boards worked. Also, forgive me, I am recovering from a head cold. So if I need to mute and cough a little bit and do a little pause, that's what's happening. So to understand the need for open science approaches like the ones we have at Openscapes, I want to give you a little introduction about my organization for those of you who might be otherwise unfamiliar. So the California Water Boards, we're a California State Department. We have about 3,000 employees in total, and that includes a state board, which is located in the state capital of Sacramento. The other 9 boards are all regional boards that are based loosely on hydrologic basins and kind of subdivided by population size. And our mission is based on preserving and enhancing California's water resources and drinking water from multiple beneficial uses. And for me, that work includes using water and landscape data to identify healthy watersheds, as well as potential policies and actions to keep them that way. But I also work on lots of other projects like Openscapes and like quantifying trash and plastics in inland waters and monitoring. And so given the diversity of my work, but also all of my colleagues' work and the size of our workforce, and the fact that we are a state agency, this is not just for us, this is for Californians. We have complex systems of people and data that could benefit from these open science practices. And one of the things that our group has done is conduct a data literacy survey. This is water board wide, and this was conducted in 2019. It's presented here in a screenshot from a Tableau dashboard. And I found these results really interesting as we continue to develop open science practices at the water boards. And these particular responses are for water boards employees, in particular data tasks. And this is for all water boards employees, not just our scientists or researchers. But regardless, most people are still pretty interested in performing these tasks, at least the ones that responded to our survey. But when you combine those tasks with various visualization softwares or coding languages, overall interest kind of drops off. And while it would be really interesting to connect a particular data task to a particular software or language, our dashboard fortunately doesn't explore this. But what we learned from this was that emphasis on a particular software or coding language or community would not be an effective approach for forking Openscapes at the water boards for people who might otherwise be interested in open science. Plus, this really mirrors my lived experience at the water boards. So even within my small 5-person unit, we have people who use R and JavaScript and Python and Excel, depending on kind of individual familiarity with those tools. And so specifically when we were making our Openscapes experience, we de-emphasized those tools and instead centered our open science work really on this human relational level. I love this figure, so I don't mind repeating it. We're all remote employees, at least in my unit at the water board. So being the bunny or skunk in the photo is really easy to do. And so while Openscapes encourages exploring all aspects of open science with your team, including all the different softwares and communities that are available, we decided to first find and focus on the practices and needs that we had in common, and then jointly moving forward. So we ran our cohort in August to October of last year, 2022, and we designed it accordingly. So much of this work, excuse me, was already developed and is available on the Openscapes website, but I'll go through some of these ideas for those of you who may be unfamiliar. So team culture exists whether we discuss it or not, and discussing values or modeling behavior helps you define and shape your team culture. And psychological safety, or the ability to take risks within a work team, enables that discussion about culture. We also have uniting data strategies. So Ileana Fenwick, presented earlier in this session, gave a great talk during our cohort that is data strategies for future us, and it really resonated with all of our members. And I think the reason that it does is because it focuses on data strategies that are important no matter what software or tools you use, such as standardizing date format, providing data dictionaries, and keeping your raw data separate from your data wrangling. In fact, having people who use different programs could be helpful in securing the details of your data strategies, as they know the quirks of each software and can contribute to that group knowledge. Documentation was a module that Anna and I developed because of the need to reproduce analyses or findings, or even just reference our complex system for onboarders and for seasoned employees who otherwise need to know that person in order to do their job. And we explored the kinds of items that might need to be documented and the different tools that we use or could use for documentation. And I do want to mention that we built on the documentation products that are focused on in the regular champions cohorts in Openscapes, including the pathway, which identifies current workflows in each work group that comes to Openscapes, as well as the next steps that will facilitate this efficient and open culture. There we go. So what is the impact of that initial cohort that we did? We now have these optional co-working meetings in our unit that are really great for knowledge sharing, finding solutions, and discussing culture and equity practices. Again, it's super nice because we're all remote employees, and these meetings help reinforce psychological safety for our team and help new members develop it. This is especially important because many programs in my and other units are headed by a single person. And so opportunities to work together are somewhat limited, but by building our pathway together, we have this joint understanding of where we are and where we want our programs to be. And we can recognize connections between our programs more easily and are more able to help get each other where we want to go. And lastly, by emphasizing what we already had in common in open science, we had cohort members who previously had no interest in other softwares actually express interest in learning R. And this wasn't a goal of ours, but certainly helps build on the impact that open science can have. So I want to end my talk by challenging those of you in the audience to think about open science as not just a change in software, but a change in daily workflow, communication, and process. We don't want to contort ourselves in order to do this work. We don't want to do open science on top of our work. We want to integrate it, and that takes time in order to do. So if you are a supervisor, manager, part of writing contracts for projects in your institution, I really want to challenge you to create spaces for your team to do this work. And part of that is slowing down to speed up. Maybe you do open science work for part of a project, or you publish part of a project to GitHub, or part of your collaboration is through shared documents, all of that kind of stuff. It really takes a lot of time in order to learn how to do this work and then also apply it. And with that, I'll pass it off to any questions.
Sorry,
Yes,
I don't have-
Louise. Oh, no, Kathy, go ahead. Sorry.
I don't have a question, but I'm just really encouraged by what you said. Like, I love your data showing how if you like emphasize the technical piece, then people are like, ooh, I don't know if I can do that. And so it's super cool that you're like, oh, just come and let's co-work and let's collaborate together. Like the collaboration is the piece that draws people in. And the tech is kind of like a byproduct. I love that. Like people are like, oh yeah, art looks cool. It's not as scary as I thought it would be. So that's really cool to see.
Yeah, I was really surprised and really encouraged by that for sure.
Luis, did you?
Yeah, I was curious about the statistics that you showed, like people interested in different things. And like Cassie said, like, excuse me, programming is not like at the top at the beginning, like definitely not something that people approach in a, like, you know, it's kind of like you would think that that is a, oh, I'm interested in this, but they're more interested in the actual, I want to visualize the idea, but I'm not necessarily, I don't know if interests would be the maybe they're like Cassie said, like afraid, but they really want the visualization, right? Not just.
Yeah, I think so. And I think part of that is, you know, the idea that I have to learn a software in order to do this, as opposed to learning ggplot in R in order to do it, is maybe like a bite-sized piece that was a lot easier for people as they went on through the program.
Eli or Audie? I didn't see. Go ahead.
Yeah, again, like many others, the survey is really interesting. So I wonder, or do you have any sense of the people that you were querying, what fraction of them, let's say, do any type of data visualization? Like, do they make plots? And how do they currently make plots, if they do, or data visualizations?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, Eli. And we actually just, I believe, received a new data literacy survey that's updated for 3 or 4 years later, that I'm hoping to work through. I don't have access to that data quite yet, but that's one of the big questions I had based on the results here were, if you divide this into scientists and researchers and people who already do some of this work, what do you currently use? That was included in this new survey, but unfortunately, we don't have a way of accessing that at the moment. But that's a really good point.
Audie, one last quick question. And
Yeah, also about the survey. I love the phrasing of the topics and then the level of scales, because sometimes a survey can be complicated to take. And so I just wanted to ask, you know, how that survey came to be. Was it modeled off of other surveys? Are these types of data literacy surveys out there for us to also pick up and run with?
Yeah, so I did not design the data literacy survey, certainly for 2019, because I didn't start at the water boards until 2021. And then I'd have to talk to the people at our office that designed it, but because I work in the Office of Information Management and Analysis, I know the people that did that. So if I do find anything interesting, I'll be in the next few minutes, I'll be sure to add it to the chat, as well as the Tableau dashboard. I see that you're not the only one with that question, Adi, about developing the data literacy survey. So thank you all for that.
awesome. Well, thank you so much, Corey, for sharing, and congratulations on all the awesomeness you've been doing at the water board. So we will go to our last speaker group now, Luis Lopez and Cassie Nichols, and we are on page 11 of the doc if you're following along. Yay.
Right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, perfect. So I'm Luis Lopez. I'm a software engineer at NSIDC, which is one of the many NASA data centers for Earth sciences. And with Cassie, we're going to talk a little bit about our experiences with Openscapes. I think I started from the beginning, the first NASA Openscapes cohort, almost 2 years ago, a year and a half, over like that. And to me, like everybody else, Openscapes have been like kind of like, you know, the quite an experience. Before Openscapes, we were doing our thing, and I was doing my thing in NSIDC, which is software engineering, but I didn't have the opportunity to work more directly with the scientists that are actually using the data and doing the workflows, and like it presented a perfect opportunity to kind of like work on things that can improve their workflows and can make things easier for them, which in turn will accelerate science. So it's been a multiplier for us, I think. And this is just a very narrow part of the whole picture, because I've been working on a particular set of things that other people are working on other set of things. But I think one of the valuable things that, like everybody was also saying, is like how to reduce the silos within our data centers. And Openscapes, through the co-working sessions and through the mentoring, have helped a lot with that, and have helped us to identify things that, well, people knew, but they were like on a different data center or a different project, and that is like really a great thing to have. So I feel when I started in Openscapes, I knew the technical part of things, or I still thinking that I know some of the technical part of things, like GitHub and Git and that kind of stuff. But it's difficult to relate that to the human part of things, and that's where Openscapes kind of brought to my workflow and my professional life. I felt kind of like an anthropologist of sorts, like trying to reverse engineering the workflows of scientists, right? Like they're not super familiar, let alone open science, but just like how to make things simpler for them. So it was, okay, so they need this data, and this is what they normally do, and this is what the outputs they are looking for. We kind of know the technical stack. What would be the steps that we need to reduce friction between what they want, what we offer, and what they need? A little bit like this diagram that you're looking at. You have a lot of environmental data through NASA archives. It's not just NASA, NOAA and other agencies have them. Right now, there is a big movement of pushing things to the cloud in the hope that, among other things, it will democratize its access. So you will do an analysis next to the data. You don't have to have necessarily a supercomputer in your basement. But it's not as simple as that. So moving data is one thing, moving workflows is complex. And that's where Openscapes and NASA Openscapes has been working with a series of different cookbooks and tutorials and even libraries or Jupyter hubs to make things simpler for them. And I totally think that it shouldn't be exclusive for, people with vast experience. And so we all have to be kind of a computer literate persons, but that shouldn't be the first thing. Like the survey talks volumes about that. Like the first thing that what I got from that is that it's not necessarily like if you start with the technical side of things, it won't be probably as open for people that are not familiar with that. So you have to start with the human side of things, and like, what is your workflow? What is your, how do you work? And we have problems that we need everybody, like Julie has said, we need everybody we can have to solve the things that we need to solve. So in the next slides, there are some of the people that have helped with this, that are DAC mentors and scientists that have been adopting the workflows that we've been put together in some of the tools that Cassie will also describe. I'm really happy with some of the things that we have accomplished. Like, for example, we now provide hubs that are not exclusively for a programming language. At the beginning, we started with Python, but if a scientist wants to work with a different language, we also offer a cloud platform for them in their language of choice. So we have currently Python, R, and MATLAB supported in the cloud. And we also started a library for making things simpler for access, like all these steps that scientists need to do in order to access data from NASA. They can do it in a couple lines of Python, which I think is awesome for like, okay, don't worry about the technicalities, just put the data you need and you get the data. So I think that that's also a great outcome of Openscapes. And I hope that all the DACs will take kind of like the lessons learned about like how to collaborate outside of the NASA frameworks, because that's another thing that I think it has helped a lot of our workflow, that we have a more, I think, more dynamic, and things within government are a little more slower, like because of bureaucracy and all that. But I think that's kind of like my takeaways of Openscapes. And now, Cassie.
Yeah, thanks, Luis. So I joined the NASA Openscapes mentors, like the second cohort, and I was only an employee at the Physical Oceanography DAC for maybe like 6 months before that. And so I was really just jumping in like, oh man, I don't know. So NASA has been recently moving all of their data to the cloud. And so I was just jumping into this cloud ecosystem too, right? And so all of these things were new to me. And I found myself just like floundering a little bit, like, man, okay, so we have data tutorials, but which one do I need for what, how, when, what, how, it's just like, it was overwhelming. So as I was thinking about this, I was talking to my colleague who's also a member of Openscapes, and we're like, maybe we should just create some cheat sheets. Like if I'm confused, other people are confused. So I started with one, and then it spun off into this like 8 cheat sheet sort of thing, which is, it can be kind of intense, right? But they're all useful and they all have their different mechanisms. So like for this instance, this one, and I'll share like a link to all of our cheat sheets later. We have this awesome cloud cookbook of like, hey, if you want to get into NASA Earth data, how do I do this? So this is just one of them. So like here, step 1, find data. How do you even do that? Step 2, like, do you want to set up a code development workspace? Do you want to set up a cloud workspace? And then there's just all these other steps that I didn't even know existed to even get to your data. So you have to have an Earth data login, authentication if you're working in the cloud, how do you access? And so just like, even as we're processing through these steps, like Luis mentioned, he created this, he spearheaded this Earth Access Python library that really took these steps 4, 5, and 7. Step 6 was a little bit skipped over because it's optional, but so steps 4, 5, and 7, and just like consolidate them so that end users aren't like, oh my gosh, these are all the steps that I have to do to get to NASA Earth data. So you can do that in the local workflow. Here's like a tools and services roadmap. Like you want to work in the cloud, you want to work on your local machine, and terminology, and just this like one-stop shop cheat sheet of like everything you could possibly think of. Hopefully, it's not everything, right? And we're interested in feedback as well. So if you're seeing something like, oh, Cass, there's something that's missing on this list, you need to have this particular thing, and let's link to it. So the cool thing about this is, yeah, it looks a little bit overwhelming at first glance, but you can hone into a very specific like tutorial from this. So if you're looking at Earth data search and you're like, oh man, I don't know how to search for NASA data or download NASA data, there's like this website here that'll take you directly this link to the Earth data search GUI. And then there's like a notebook that outlines next to it, like, oh, this is exactly the steps that I need. So I thought that this has been super cool to just like outline my experiences and maybe help others streamline into the process too. But I've also noticed like, okay, so I've made all these resources. My main challenge now that I'm thinking about is like, how do I get these resources to the people that actually need them and would benefit from them, and how do they use them? So I'm kind of like, okay, how do I become a marketer? So, but I loved Ileana earlier when she was mentioning like, okay, let's take a step back. These are the reasons why I wouldn't do this, this, and this, and filling in the cracks. So that was like really inspiring to me, just to sit back and say like, okay, Cassie, what if you were completely new all over again, even though you just became new? Like, how would you search for this sort of thing, you know? So I'm going to take some of those ideas and run with them later.
Great. Thank you so much, Cassie and Luis. And I love, Cassie, that you shared some of your story and the cheat sheets, and we can see that, and we can see all those steps. And then what's been so cool is like how, as a mentor community, you've also been like reducing those steps, right? With that Python library, the Earth Access library that Luis has created, and just like kind of that combination of the conceptual and software contributions to like help teach and develop and support researchers. It's so awesome. Any quick follow-up for this group before we switch to the discussion? Josh, please.
Yeah, I had a question for Cassie and Louise, like maybe Cassie mostly, but just so you've got the cheat sheets and you've got this effort that you put into that, but how much time have you put into just really kind of hands-on trainings or kind of really walking people through those cheat sheets? Or is it kind of, you know, you put it out there and hope that they find time to consume it themselves? Is there space within the agency for, you know, online workshops or focused efforts to walk people through those hands-on?
Yeah, that's a great question, Josh. We haven't done that specifically yet. So prior to this cheat sheet like initiative, we had done like a ton of online workshops, like maybe like 4 in the span of like a couple months. And it was just like overwhelming. So we're like, okay, that's one mechanism of how to do it. But we also want to have like self-paced learning as well. So like we kind of switched over gears of like, okay, so we can have all the online hackathons and stuff we want, and those are great. But we also need to beef up like our online presence so that people can walk through them later. But that is a great idea because we can't just like focus on one and then not have the other. So I think the next steps is definitely, once we have this solid groundwork, to take that and what we've learned back into the like hackathon setting.
Eli, please.
Just following up on what Josh said and what you were talking about, Cassie. So I participated in the SnowX hack week with eScience over, I guess it was summer. And one interesting thing that community is trying out is doing this like semester-long hack week that is integrated with universities. So having professors that are involved with the SnowX campaign. For those who aren't familiar, this is a NASA supported campaign about the snow, remote sensing and field surveys and all this stuff. Anyhow, yeah, so I thought that was really interesting, and I'm looking forward to kind of following up with the fellow HP Marshall who was leading that, because that seems like an interesting way that we can like develop this content and then try to get other people to basically run this content. Oh. I guess TOPS is also kind of trying that idea too, creating content that other people will run.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Well, thank you again to all of our speakers. And we can shift into a broader discussion too. I see that there's some questions already in the doc on the bottom of page 12. And yeah, wanted to first, Stephanie, how should we, are there any questions you've kind of seen coming a couple times through the chat that you want to lift up first, or where should we start?
Well, right now, Abby has a couple of questions in the doc, and sure, a couple of people have added notes, but maybe Abby could choose one to start and throw it to everybody else.
Yeah, which one? I think it's a good question. I think I'll start with my second one because it might have more applicability across the group. So I'm wondering if you have any advice for government employees who, it seems to me we're getting more and more restrictions, and it's getting harder and harder to collaborate across organizations. It's easy to collaborate within USGS, but I really have trouble trying to collaborate across, and we just keep getting new policies that make it harder. Like we can't use GitHub really, and everything has to be reviewed and approved and perfect. So it kind of goes against that idea of putting something out before it's perfect. You have to have it finalized before you can put it out anywhere. So I guess that's my question. Josh, how do you answer?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's interesting. There's just so many differences between agencies too, right? Like where all government agencies are the same, and each agency kind of goes to these cult. I mean, I remember I feel like seven plus years ago, I was like beating my head against the wall trying to get GitHub and NOAA, and I'm looking over at USGS colleagues who have a GitHub presence and have these capabilities that I didn't have. And so it would be great if all of us would just get on the same page and move forward. But it seems like we kind of go through these ebbs and flows, and there's different policies that come and go. And so, within NOAA, I feel like we've slowly over time built this movement, and now we're starting to see kind of a national level embracing of GitHub. And so now we're kind of maybe the I don't know, the tables have turned a bit. Now NOAA's the one that's kind of leading on the GitHub thing, and then you're feeling that USGS has more restrictions, but it's really hard, I guess is what I'm saying. And it does seem like it is kind of a constant effort to kind of keep that forward. And the best advice I can give is that those of us who use these tools on a regular basis, and those of us who have seen the benefits and are passionate about it, have to kind of keep ourselves at the table when those decisions are being made. And it's not even like things like GitHub or something as simple. I collaborate a lot with ADF&G. ADF&G has a policy that their employees are not allowed to use Google for anything, but NOAA is a full-on Google agency. So everything we do is Google Meet and Google Docs, but then one of our key stakeholders can't use that. And so we're constantly trying to figure out how to navigate that, how to not exclude them from collaborations, but still make that easy. And I feel like they're at some level in the agencies, that voice needs to be heard, and they need to understand the ramifications of those decisions. And we just kind of have to keep at it and not be discouraged. That wasn't a very good answer, but it's just sharing that I hear you, and it's hard. Eli can chime in too.
I'm wondering, before Eli, maybe there's someone else who has their hand up. Oh, yeah.
Yes, Guy B.
Sorry, Sky. Yeah, so this is a big issue, and I rant about it quite a bit in the organization over time. One of the things that I'm working on right now that I'm hoping will be constructive toward that is a handbook type of approach at looking at open science principles and practices specifically for our organization in USGS, and how they butt up against our fundamental science practices, which is essentially our group of policies within a manual that describes exactly how we have to operate. And so much of the time, what actually happens in our organization is we have many, many different interpretations of policy that get implemented all throughout the organization in different ways. often misinterpretations of policy or over-interpretations of policy that create the problems for us, that create the barriers and challenges that we have. So what I'm trying to do is use this Year of Open Science opportunity to really critically examine that for us as an organization, try to highlight the areas where we need to be thinking about the future evolution of our policies, but more importantly, where we need to be taking a critical look at the implementation of those policies and things that we can do better, things that we can communicate better, things that we can bring into our training. And that's where the Openscapes work is really quite intriguing to me, that will really help to get us to a better place in all of that. So I'm working through that, kind of really starting to get the ball rolling, starting to talk, especially amongst our executives, on how we can carry this forward. USGS is not quite as far along and gung-ho around open science yet as I'd like us to be, but there's certainly work in process to try to get us down that path. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll kind of follow up on Josh's comments. So one, make connections across agencies. That's really, really important. I have definitely heard the kind of things that you are saying from folks from USGS. And sometimes it seems like, the view is like, oh, this is the way it is in the federal agencies. And no, it's kind of, I feel like right now USGS is more restrictive. So like making connections across agencies is really important. You hear what other agencies are doing, and the fact that one agency, like they had all these rules 5 years ago, folks might have really been working on things and things have changed. And so I see that happening in NOAA. And I at NOAA really use the successes in other agencies. So like NASA's work with open science, I leverage that so hard. Every conversation, I'm like, hey, they'll say, oh, you can't do this. I'll say, hey, look what NASA's doing. Hey, look, they're a leader. Why aren't we a leader? Are we just like followers? We shouldn't be followers. It's just kind of like playing on that. And then the second thing is like really collecting examples. Here's a research book that our community has collected, where we were like dealing with GitHub, and where they would say, oh, GitHub use is like blah, blah, blah. And then to come back and say, that's not true. All of GSA, look at them. They have 900 repositories of different levels of like sort of, gold, silver, bronze sort of quality, or like, hey, all of the Veterans Affairs internal development is on GitHub. It's GitHub Enterprise, but anyhow, right? So to come back and say, no, what you're saying is not true, and give examples. So that's my advice. Don't give up.
Yeah. Ariana, I'll let you follow up on that. And then Ileana, we saw that you had written a more detailed response as well in the docs. Wanted to give you a moment to share that too. Great.
One more thing to leverage is, especially when you're talking with the leadership, when we were introducing the idea of Openscapes to our leaders at the Southeast Fisheries Science Center, we leveraged the fact that our strategic plan said that we wanted employees to feel empowered to innovate. And what are we doing that proves that? This fit exactly into that element of our strategic plan. And it's exciting to see so much kind of official documentation coming out at such high levels that will trickle into our federal, our Department of Commerce strategic plan going forward, about how we're moving forward. So that's really exciting, and something to check out all, to really be able to point to that the higher ups are supporting this. So let's also bring it into both levels, top down, bottom up, and let's make progress here.
Thanks, Adi, and thanks to all of you for, I mean, these examples of the work that you've all put in, the conversations, the connections, the examples, all of these, the effort you've put into helping, it's like through these conversations, right, that we're changing this culture and building this movement. And so on that point, Ileana, since you started off describing in detail how you've been doing this, I wanted to give you a little bit more time to follow up.
Yeah, and I was thinking in response, especially to Eli's question, how to connect with HBCU faculty, how to connect and establish connections with increasing diversity in mind. And I realized that it's saying that I already went to an HBCU and knew a lot of HBCU faculty isn't necessarily the best answer, because it's not something that can be replicated very easily. And so in kind of thinking about it while we were chatting, I wanted to share 3 ways or 3 things that I think folks should keep in mind when you're looking to increase diversity in the connections that you make, whether it's with HBCUs, with faculty, or even with organizations. Like when we approach BIMS and BLEAMS, that was a collaboration proposal to them. And so these are some things to keep in mind if you're thinking about doing stuff like that. The first is that surface level efforts are very easy to spot, much easier than people probably think. Asking yourself questions like, what is your motivation for this work? Is it genuine? Is the space that you're inviting students to a safe space for marginalized students? Will they see that in the programming that you've already put on, in the way that your organization is perceived by the industry? We can tell when you wrote your broader impacts last. And I think that as scientists, we are often in the kind of workflow of doing things in order, and our broader impacts is usually that last paragraph, but inclusion is not an afterthought, and your planning and your process and building up the programming that you want to develop should demonstrate that. So that's number 1. The second is that we exist. So you would be probably very surprised, unfortunately, the amount of times to my face I've been told Black marine scientists do not exist. And the amount of times when I've been advocating for inclusion or diversity or wanting to see more Black students in these spaces, and I was told to my face, they don't want to be here. There's no, we've asked, we've sent it out, they don't apply, they're not here, they don't exist. But what I'm here to tell you is that we exist. We will have 130 plus of them on the call tonight. And that is just a small segment of the population of diverse and marginalized people who are interested in these topics. And so if your efforts are not yielding diverse participation, it's not because we aren't there, it's because your efforts need to be tailored more specifically and more intentionally. And I think that that's something that we can all keep in mind, especially as we push forward more initiatives. And the last is to center diverse voices. If there are no members of your team from your target audience, or your team is not reflective, you should probably take a step back and ask yourself, are we the ones who need to be doing this work? Because we can amplify and empower diverse leadership and support them with our funds. We can support them with our time, with our energy, with the resources that we have, and we can use that privilege to push the project forward. But how can we center the diverse voices when these projects are tailored to reaching diverse audiences? And so I just wanted to throw some of those out there. I'm happy to touch on them more, speak to that experience, but I didn't want to just leave it as I'm an HBCU grad. I wanted to share some tactics that we can all keep in mind as we're building a more equitable future in the field. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ileana. Your depth of expertise is, yeah, thank you for sharing with us and being so generous with it. I know you've also typed that up in the doc too on page 13. Thank you so much.
Julie, I don't see other new questions in the doc or in the chat. I'm going to paste something in the chat that Eli has put in the doc, and that maybe people can come in and everybody can type in the doc to answer the question. So Eli is asking, in the ideal world, how much time per week would you devote to learning? Ideal world. And number 2, how much time do you devote to learning? And so I suggest we don't take time to discuss this out loud, but it'd be interesting if people put their comments and opinions in there.
Good. And yeah, we could all just open up the mic too. Are there questions from anyone in the room, or other questions within the speakers?
I have a comment. It's difficult for me to answer because sometimes when I'm working and I'm troubleshooting, I'm learning at the same time.
I agree, like the learning and the doing and the troubleshooting and the documentation, and then the including other folks in that learning is like all sort of blended together often.
Yeah, I think too, I've noticed there can be a quick frustration when we go from all these ideals and grand kind of topics about open science and all this great stuff we're going to do. There's this really messy bit where we have to iterate and try things and fail and, you know, fail again and get through that to get to some point where we actually have kind of integrated some of this stuff into our workflows, and finding time for that messy bit is difficult, and like keeping people inspired during that messy bit is difficult, and recognizing, I think it was Corey that said, you know, slowing down to speed up kind of thing. Like you do have to kind of slow down and work through that messy bit. And you know, sometimes in the academic world, there's space for that. I don't know that we've really built that well across government. It's about getting stuff done today or getting stuff done that was due last week today. And so finding ways to get through that messy bit is a challenge. It's something I struggle with as a mentor, and also recognizing that sometimes open science is a longer process because we're better at it. We document better, we provide more information. It's not just going in to attract changes and making a bunch of edits and then done. There's a process that's more deliberate, that takes more time. It's a better process in the end, but it takes more time. So I don't know, it's a big struggle for me how to keep that inspiration going and to keep people inspired through the messy bit.
Audie, did you want to follow up too? And then
Just
Luis?
really quick, I love like phrases and sayings and memes that I can put up on my wall, and I have one, so these aren't my words, but the being bad at something is the first step to becoming sort of good at it.
Love it. I love your sayings too. You inspire us and so many people with all of your sayings and analogies. Thanks for sharing. Luis, what's on your mind?
Yeah, and I was thinking that this is from AGU when we were like listening to you and Chell and others at the Open Science talk, and I was thinking like, you get excited about open science. It's always difficult to implement it sometimes because, you know, it more than the tools is the mindset and policy changes, and you need support from people in the higher position to show like this makes sense because it's going to produce, you know, a better society. But one of the things that gets me excited is like, it's not like we haven't done science in the past century. It's just like, you know, very silo, very hero oriented. And I was thinking like, imagine if everybody would practice open science to the level that Openscapes enables us to do. What kind of progress can we make if you remove the barriers that we have, the technical barriers, but most importantly, the mindset, right? If we all collaborate in this kind of agile environment, what kind of discoveries, instead of like taking 20 years to discover something, maybe it will take us like 5. So that's one of the things that I'm really excited about, to see if open science takes off.
Yeah, I love that, Luis. I mean, yeah, I think like, the ultimate, goal here is not actually, open science. It's, climate solutions, it's social justice, it's democracy. It's like putting our, like, it's like, what can we do and achieve through this way of working together? And like, as folks have like, higher morale in their daily work, because like, they're not, renaming files by hand, but they're like synced with, their colleagues across the country or internationally on GitHub. And they're like, they're like removing those little daily bits of friction and empowering folks and having them have real connections and focused on those big solutions. I mean, I think that's like why we do it, and to sort of help get folks feeling unstuck, like, moving from those sad animals into that landscape, like at all scales, cyclically and spreading is really, yeah, that's what we're all here for. And it's so awesome to hear all of your stories of making this happening and spreading this movement, and supporting each other. And yeah, any final thoughts? I know we're just about time. Maybe that's a great place to kind of end. There's other things in the chat. I'm just connecting. Yeah, thank you, Megan. Yeah, sharing, communicating what you've learned is often how you've truly learned it, and we need more opportunities like that. Yeah, yeah, and ESIP is one of them. Yeah, thank you all for joining us, and for ESIP for supporting all of us. Any last thoughts? I know folks have other places to go next.
I know Matthew Biddle put a comment in the chat. Maybe you want to speak to it briefly. How do we make learning work? And that's what are you thinking about that, Matthew?
Yeah, can you hear me? All right.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah, I just keep seeing a lot of people expressing that I have to do my work. I don't have time to learn these new activities. So how do we flip it on its head and say learning the activity is part of your work? So how do we get that into your professional development plans or into whatever it is that you use as a mechanism for tracking your work? And that, I know I've done that. I've put an expressed effort into, I'm going to learn how to deploy websites using GitHub Actions as part of my work plan. But that's not something that everybody can do, but that's kind of where that conversation's going.
Adi.
So my thought there is we don't all have to experience the same learning curve. Once you've got up that curve, send down a rope, and as we're learning and making those cheat sheets, we help others catch up with us, and then they're with us exploring the ground ahead, and then continuing that process.
I love it. Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for this session, for all of your contributions, to the participants and all your great questions, and everybody being in the doc. We will follow up with a blog post following this session, and it will be recorded and available through ESIP and beyond. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day, and keep up all the good work. It's just the most inspiring thing. Thank you.